Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room was filled with voices, low, sharp, colliding with one another like clashing blades. Maps spread across the long oak table, red markers pressed into enemy lines, photographs laid out in uneven stacks. A storm of tension brewed under fluorescent lights. Yet she sat in silence, not invisible but treated as if her voice didn't matter. She leaned back slightly in her chair, her hands folded neatly in front of her, eyes scanning the shifting shadows of men who never quite looked her way. They moved their pens, tapped their fingers, exchanged glances of authority. And though her presence was undeniable, uniform crisp, posture sharp, they brushed past her as if she were an afterthought. The irony burned, because tonight she was the only shield they had. Her breath slowed, steady, almost practiced. She had taught herself to quiet the storm inside when the world turned its back. Years of it. And yet, some part of her still longed for acknowledgement, for the flicker of respect that seemed freely given to others but withheld from her. The colonel's voice cut through the room. We insert at 2300 hours, 2 squads on the ridge, air support overhead, sniper cover from Building 17. His finger traced a red circle across the map, then a second. He didn't look at her, not once. She studied the circle. Building 17, that was hers, it had to be. It was the most vulnerable point in the plan, too exposed, too uncertain. No one else wanted it. She knew they wouldn't assign it to her with ceremony. They would just leave the silence long enough until the burden naturally fell her way. And she would take it, as she always did. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. A flicker of memory crossed her mind. The sound of a hospital monitor beeping in rhythm with her sister's breathing. The sharp smell of antiseptic. The weight of guilt that still pressed on her chest like an unshakable stone. She blinked, and the memory dissolved into the cold, humming air of the briefing room. She kept her silence. When the briefing ended, the room emptied in fragments of boots, murmurs, and the faint scrape of chairs. She was the last to rise. She slid the edge of a photograph into her jacket pocket when no one was looking. It wasn't her face in the photo. It was the face of the man who had once promised to bring her sister home safe. He hadn't, and the world had carried on like nothing happened. Outside, the air was thick with the scent of rain on metal. The base was alive with movement, trucks growling, helicopters vibrating against the darkening sky, soldiers tightening straps and checking rifles. She walked slowly, deliberately, as if packing herself for something heavier than her steps could carry. One of the younger soldiers passed by, nodding quickly, eyes flicking away almost as fast, respect laced with unease. She was used to it. They didn't know what to make of her. A woman in a place that chewed men down to the bone. A sniper with more confirmed kills than most of their celebrated heroes. A ghost in her own unit. She adjusted the strap of her rifle and paused near the edge of the airfield. The sound of rotors filled the night, sharp, biting through the damp air. Lights cut across the ground, painting brief glows on her face before vanishing into darkness. She closed her eyes for just a moment, feeling the vibrations in her chest. This wasn't just another mission. It couldn't be. Because the man in the photograph, the one she carried now, was tied to tonight in ways none of them understood, and she wasn't ready to explain why. Not yet. The ride out was quiet. She sat pressed against the vibrating wall of the helicopter, rifle between her knees, helmet strap digging lightly into her chin. Around her, the squad traded glances, some whispering short words, others staring into the dark void beyond the open door. She didn't join them. She didn't need to. She had her own conversations running silently inside her head. She thought of her sister again, the way her laughter once filled a room, the way it fell silent forever because someone hadn't kept their promise, because she herself hadn't been there. And maybe tonight was the closest thing to redemption she would ever get. Her heart beat steady, but beneath that steadiness lived a question she couldn't shake. Was she here to protect them, or to finally bury the ghost that had been haunting her since that day? The helicopter banked hard. Voices shouted over the roar. A hand tapped her shoulder, signaling final approach. She nodded without looking back. The city stretched below in fragments of shadow and broken light. Windows glowed faintly in abandoned buildings. Streets ran black and hollow. Somewhere out there, behind cracked concrete and shattered glass, was Building 17. Her perch, her cage, her stage. When the skids hit the ground, dust and rain exploded upward. Boots pounded the earth. Orders barked. She slipped out of the helicopter and into the wet night, moving with quiet certainty. Her destination loomed. She climbed the staircase of Building 17 step by step, every creak of rusted metal echoing louder than it should. The walls were scarred with old bullet holes, plaster cracked like veins across a dying body. She reached the top floor, the place where silence hung heaviest. She set her rifle down, adjusted her scope, wiped the rain from the glass with her glove, and then waited. The city stretched before her like a wounded beast. Lights flickered. Wind howled through broken windows. Her breath was steady, visible in faint clouds. Every second carried weight. Every second pulled her closer to something she hadn't yet admitted, even to herself. She sighted the ridge where the squads would move. She tracked the shadows, the rooftops, the streets that could spill enemies at any moment. She listened to the faint hum of her own pulse in her ears. And then a flicker of movement. Not enemy, not yet. She blinked, adjusting her scope. Her heart tightened. What she saw in the glass wasn't what she expected. It was him. The man from the photograph. Alive. Standing across the street in a shattered window, his face half lit by a flickering bulb. Her chest constricted, her breath caught. The man who had promised her sister's safety. The man she thought buried years ago. And in that instant the mission blurred. Because if he was alive, everything she believed about that night was a lie. How could he be alive? Her eye stayed pressed against the scope, unwilling to blink, unwilling to give the city even a sliver of her distraction. Rain slid down the shattered window frame of her perch, dripping onto her glove. She barely felt it. The man across the street, the one who had abandoned her sister to a silence no medicine could fix, stood there, breathing, moving, living. Her mind screamed questions, but her body froze. Every instinct told her to focus on the mission, cover the ridge, watch the streets, protect the men below. But how could she steady her rifle when the face staring back at her from the broken window was the same face she had buried in memory? He wasn't looking at her, not yet. He leaned slightly out, speaking into a radio pressed against his mouth. His hair was longer than she remembered, his uniform unmarked, no insignia. He was part of something else now, something darker. Her jaw clenched. For years she carried his name in silence, folded into the folds of grief. He had been the promise that failed, the soldier who swore to guard her sister until she could return home. But instead of her sister, a flag-draped coffin had arrived, and he had vanished. Official reports called him missing in action. Rumors called him dead. She had believed them, needed to believe them. Until now. The radio in her earpiece crackled. Sniper 17, confirm overwatch. Do you copy? Her throat tightened. She lowered the scope for the briefest second, forcing air into her lungs. If she spoke, her voice would betray the storm raging inside. She pressed the transmit button anyway. Sniper 17 in position, eyes on. Her words came out steadier than she felt. Below, shadows moved through the streets, her squad advancing toward the ridge. Their boots splashed through puddles. Their rifles swept through corners. They trusted her silence, trusted her aim. They didn't know that her crosshairs had just locked on a ghost. And she didn't know if she could pull the trigger. The man moved again, stepping back into shadow. He hadn't seen her, but the weight of his presence made every second heavier. She tried to steady herself. Mission first, answers later. But the problem was, what if the answers were tied to the mission in ways she couldn't yet see? Her scope shifted back to the ridge. Movement. Not friendly. Figures emerged in the haze, armed, slipping into flanking positions. She drew a long breath, let it out slow, and squeezed. The shot cracked through the night. One target fell. Her rifle bucked softly against her shoulder, echo fading into rain and wind. She fired again. Another body dropped. Her men below pressed forward, unaware of the ghost watching from across the street, unaware of the fracture opening inside her. She lowered the rifle just enough to glance at him again. He was still there, speaking low into the radio, but now his eyes had shifted, straight toward her building. Her chest constricted. Did he know? A voice in her earpiece snapped her back. "Good eyes, 17. Keep M off us. We're pushing." She swallowed hard, adjusted her scope, and took another shot. The mission was still alive, but so was the lie. Her hands trembled between shots, something they hadn't done in years. She remembered the last night she'd seen him, standing at the train station, her sister clinging to him as though he were an anchor. "I'll bring her back," he had promised, no matter what. He hadn't. And yet here he was. The rain thickened, tapping against broken glass. The smell of wet concrete filled her lungs. She shifted her position slightly, rolling her shoulder to ease the tension. Her body was here now, but her mind was at war, between the rifle and the memory, the mission and the ghost. Minutes bled together, fire exchanged below. Her shots cut down threats as they rose, but always in the corner of her vision was him, watching, silent, waiting. Why hadn't he fired? Why hadn't he run? Unless he wasn't here for them. Unless he was here for her. The thought wrapped itself around her chest. What if everything tonight, the mission, the setup, the building she had been assigned, wasn't coincidence? What if it had been designed to bring her here, to him? Her pulse hammered louder than the rain. And then, movement on her stairwell. Her body reacted before thought could catch up. She swiveled, rifle ready, scope dropped for close quarters. A shadow climbed the steps, boots scraping rusted metal. She leveled the barrel, finger on the trigger. A whisper carried up the stairs, "Don't shoot." Not enemy, not command. A voice too soft, too familiar. It wasn't him. It was one of her own. Private Alvarez. Young, face pale in the half-light, eyes wide like a child caught in a storm. He crouched low, breath ragged, rifle slung but trembling in his grip. "They split us up," he whispered. I got turned around, didn't know where else to go." His fear was real, raw. She lowered her weapon slowly, gesturing him forward. He crept beside her, still shaking. For a moment, the weight of responsibility grounded her again. He wasn't just a soldier. He was someone's son, someone who carried his own silent story. "You stay here," she said softly. "Keep your eyes on the stairwell. Nothing gets past you." He nodded quickly, gripping his weapon tighter, relief and fear battling in his expression. She turned back to her scope. The window across the street was empty. He was gone. Her stomach dropped, a hollow ache spreading through her chest. She scanned quickly, desperately. Rooftops, alleys, windows, nothing. The ghost had slipped away. And in his absence, one truth settled like a blade against her spine. If he was alive, then the story of her sister's death, the story she had been told, the story she had built her silence around, was a lie. And lies had a way of crawling back to the surface. Where had he gone? Her scope swept the city, cutting across rooftops, alleys, broken windows. Nothing. The rain blurred her vision, droplets streaking the glass. She wiped it clean with her glove, breath pressing sharp against the eyepiece. Empty. The window across the street was bare. He had vanished as quickly as he appeared, like he'd never been there at all. But she knew he had. She could still feel the weight of his presence pressing on her chest, the echo of a betrayal she had never forgiven. Her radio crackled again. "Sniper 17, confirm clear. We're pinned down, need your eyes." Duty pulled her back. She steadied her rifle, shifted her aim, and scanned the ridge. Shadows danced between crumbled walls, muzzles flashing with fire. She squeezed the trigger. A shot cracked through the storm. One figure dropped. She exhaled, fired again, and another fell. The rhythm steadied her breathing, anchored her hands. But the ghost lingered in her periphery. Beside her, Private Alvarez flinched at each shot. His knuckles whitened on his rifle, eyes flicking between the stairwell and her. He was too green for this, too young. She could see the fear etched in his shoulders, the shallow tremor in his breath. "You got family back home?" she asked suddenly, her voice low, deliberate. The question caught him off guard. His eyes darted to her, uncertain. Then he nodded. "My mom, my little sister." His voice cracked at the word. He swallowed, trying to mask it. "She just turned 12. Her jaw tightened. A familiar ache twisted in her chest. She almost asked what his sister's laugh sounded like, but the thought was too raw. Instead, she gave him the only thing she could. "Then you keep your eyes on that stairwell. You stay alive for them." Alvarez nodded, his breathing steadier now, clinging to her words like a lifeline. The crack of gunfire below dragged her focus back through the scope. Her squad was pushing, pinned behind a rusted bus. Enemy fire stitched the ground inches from their boots. She picked her shots carefully, each trigger squeezed like a small exhale of vengeance. 3 down, 4. The ridge began to thin. Then movement in the corner of her glass. Her pulse jumped. A figure slipped through an alley, moving with purpose, not like the scattered fighters she'd been cutting down. The outline was familiar, too familiar. Broad shoulders, confident stride. Even at this distance, she knew. Him. He wasn't retreating, he wasn't hiding, he was moving closer toward her men. Her breath snagged in her throat. She tracked him through the scope, finger poised on the trigger. This was her chance. She could end it now, bury the ghost for good. But she hesitated. What if he was an enemy? What if the truth of her sister's death, everything she'd been told, was tangled up in him still? If she pulled the trigger now, she'd never know. She'd silence the one person who could explain why her sister hadn't come home. Her finger trembled against the trigger. The radio barked again. "Sniper 17, take the shot. That bastard's coordinating them. Drop him now." Her chest heaved. Her eye burned against the scope. The command was clear. The mission demanded it. But her heart refused. She lifted her finger, just slightly enough to resist. The man slipped out of sight behind a wall. The moment was gone. "Sniper 17, what the hell?" The voice thundered through her earpiece. She didn't answer. Beside her, Alvarez stared, confusion etched on his young face. He had seen her hesitate. He had seen the choice. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but fear held him silent. She turned her eyes back to the stairwell, gripping her rifle tighter than before. The battle below raged on. Her shots kept her men alive, but her silence pressed heavier with each passing second. Minutes stretched. The rain turned colder, harder, dripping through cracks in the roof. Her gloves were soaked, her sleeves heavy with water. Yet she stayed sharp, every muscle wound tight. Then a sound. Not from the ridge, not from below. From inside the building. The faintest creak of a door. The hush of boots on wet concrete. Not Alvarez, not friendly. She motioned to him quickly, pressing a finger to her lips. His eyes widened, his hands tightening around his rifle. The steps grew louder, slow, deliberate, coming closer. Her chest swelled with cold air. She shifted her rifle, barrel aimed at the dark hallway beyond. The stairwell Alvarez guarded was empty. This sound came from deeper inside. Another entry, someone who knew the building better than they did. And then a shadow filled the doorway. Not enemy. Him. Soaked in rain, rifle slung low, face half-lit by the flicker of distant lightning. His eyes locked on hers across the ruined room. She froze, so did Alvarez. The silence stretched, thick, unbearable. Her hands ached to lift the rifle, to put the crosshairs on him again. but she didn't move. Neither did he. Finally, his lips parted. A voice she hadn't heard in years filled the broken space between them. "They lied to you," he said softly. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. Alvarez flinched, raising his weapon, but she lifted her hand, stopping him. Her throat worked, words caught somewhere between rage and grief. "You're supposed to be dead." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his jaw. "I was to them, but not to her." Her stomach twisted. "Don't." But before she could finish, a burst of gunfire ripped through the night. Bullets shattered glass, ricocheting off concrete. Alvarez dove to the floor. She grabbed her rifle, scanning for targets. The man moved too, crouching low, pressing his back against the wall near her. For one fractured moment, they weren't enemies. They were just bodies pressed into survival, caught between the storm outside and the storm inside. And as the gunfire echoed through the hollow building, one truth settled in her chest. Whatever he was, whatever he had done, his survival was no accident. And the mission tonight was no longer just about her squad. It was about the lies that had built her silence. What do you do when the man you swore to hate is suddenly the one shielding you from bullets? The air split with gunfire, glass raining down like shards of ice. She pressed her cheek into the floor, rifle clutched against her chest, the storm outside roaring louder than her heartbeat. Alvarez lay flat beside her, breath sharp and shallow, eyes wide with panic. Across the room he moved, fluid, deliberate, dragging a metal cabinet into position as cover. Bullets thudded against it, sparking fragments into the air. He crouched low, gestured to her sharply. Not enemy gestures, not foreign, military hand signs. Instinct, training, muscle memory. She responded before her mind could argue. She shifted, covered Alvarez, returned fire through the shattered frame of a window. One figure outside dropped, swallowed by the rain. Another darted back into shadow. The noise thinned, then vanished into silence. She exhaled, body trembling from the sudden release. Her eyes flicked to him. He was already watching her, chest heaving, water dripping from his hair. "They'll circle back," he said. His voice was rougher now, deeper, edged with exhaustion. "We don't have long." Her jaw tightened. "Start talking." Alvarez lifted his head slightly, confused. "Wait, you know him." She ignored the boy, eyes locked on the man across from her. "You're supposed to be dead. You left her." His face twisted, not with guilt but with something harder, defiance. "No, I didn't leave her. They left both of us." Her throat burned. She wanted to scream, to fire a bullet through him right here. But the weight of Alvarez beside her, the squad outside, the mission still hanging in the balance, she couldn't. Not yet. Alvarez sat up slowly, nerves etched across his young features. "Ma'am, who is he?" The question cut sharp. She didn't answer, couldn't, not until she understood it herself. The man shifted his weight, eyes narrowing. "They told you she died because of me, didn't they? That I abandoned her in the field. That's why you've been carrying this." Her grip tightened on the rifle. "Stop." But he didn't. He leaned forward, voice low, intimate against the storm. "She wasn't supposed to be there. That convoy was off the books. Command sent us in without support. We walked into an ambush that was never meant to be survived. I tried to pull her out. I tried. But when I went back for her—" His voice cracked for the first time. He swallowed hard, eyes dropping. "They had already written us both off." Her chest constricted. The rain drummed louder against the roof, masking the silence between them. Alvarez looked between them, lost. He didn't know the story, but he could feel its weight pressing the air flat. She steadied her voice, cold as steel. "You expect me to believe that?" He met her gaze, unwavering. "I don't care what you believe, but the men you're protecting out there, the mission you think is clean, it isn't. Same people who left her, same people who left me. And now they've put you here in this building knowing I'd find you." Her stomach turned. A part of her wanted to dismiss it as manipulation, as lies whispered in the dark to pull her off balance. But the way his words landed, the cracks they found in her silence, they felt too close to truths she had long buried. Her earpiece buzzed suddenly, dragging her back. Sniper 17 status. We're regrouping near the south block. Where the hell are those shooters coming from? She pressed her transmit. Her voice came out even, hiding the storm inside. Still holding Building 17. Multiple hostiles in the area. Advise caution. She clicked off, breath ragged. The man smirked faintly, bitterly, still covering for them. Her temper flared. Shut your mouth. Before the argument could deepen, Alvarez's sharp whisper cut through. Movement. The stairwell, heavy boots, multiple. Her body reacted instantly. She swung the rifle toward the stairwell, sighting low. Alvarez mirrored her, though his hands shook. The man moved too, drawing a pistol from his side, bracing against the wall. For a moment the three of them, bound by past, fear, and half-truths, stood aligned against a common threat. Figures surged into the stairwell, shouts in a language Alvarez didn't understand, flashlights slicing through the rain-dark air. She fired, one fell. Alvarez's rifle barked, wild but effective. The man fired clean, precise, two shots that dropped another. Bodies crumpled on the stairs. The last intruder lunged through, firing blind. Alvarez froze, panic locking his body. Without thinking, she shoved him down, rolled, and fired. The shot punched clean through the man's chest. He collapsed against the railing, lifeless. Silence again, heavy, suffocating silence. Alvarez panted, his hands trembling violently. She grabbed his wrist, grounding him. Breathe, you're alive, that's all that matters. His wide eyes met hers, gratitude swimming behind fear. And when she looked up, the man was watching them both. Not with malice, not with triumph, but with something unreadable, something almost human. Her anger boiled. Why are you here? He holstered his pistol slowly. Because the people you trust sent you into a trap, and because you're the only one left who deserves to know the truth. Her fists clenched around the rifle. The words cut, seared, unsettled every certainty she clung to. And before she could demand more, the earpiece flared again. Sniper 17, evac window in 15, South Alley. If you're not there, you're on your own. 15 minutes, her squad was pulling out. Her gaze flicked between Alvarez, still trembling but alive, and the man, standing in the rain-soaked ruin with secrets that threatened to shatter everything she believed. The choice pressed against her like the barrel of a gun. Follow her men to safety, or stay in the building with the ghost of her past and the truth she might never hear again. The storm outside howled, waiting for her answer. How do you choose between survival and truth when the clock is ticking down? Her earpiece hissed again, the colonel's voice sharp with urgency. Sniper 17, repeat, evac window closing, South Alley, 12 minutes, move. The words pressed like ice into her spine. She glanced at Alvarez, young, trembling, his chest rising fast with each uneven breath. His eyes begged her silently, let's go, please. Then her gaze slid to the man, the ghost, the betrayal. He stood calm despite the storm, rain dripping from his shoulders, eyes steady on hers. If you leave now, you'll never know. They'll bury the truth deeper than your sister ever was. Her chest tightened. The storm outside seemed to echo the storm inside. Alvarez's whisper broke the silence. Ma'am, we can't stay. If we miss the window, we're done. The man's voice cut through, low and sharp. If you go, you'll live the rest of your life with their version of her death. Is that survival, or is that just another kind of grave? Her heart thudded. Her sister's laugh rang in her mind, followed by the hospital monitor's flatline. The ache of promises broken. The silence of nights she couldn't explain. She pressed her lips tight, torn between two worlds. The stairwell groaned suddenly. Voices, heavy boots. The enemy was circling back, faster than expected. Decision time, the man said, his pistol already raised. Alvarez looked at her, desperation spilling out. "Ma'am, we have to go." Her body tensed, rifle heavy in her grip. She forced herself to breathe to steady the chaos inside. She looked at Alvarez, saw her sister's shadow in his fear, her sister's innocence reflected in his wide eyes. He deserved a chance to go home. She grabbed his shoulder, voice firm. "South Alley, now." Relief flashed across his face. He nodded quickly, scrambling toward the stairwell. But then she turned back, her eyes locked on the man. "You're coming with me, and you're going to tell me everything." His expression shifted, a flicker of surprise, then a faint nod. Together they moved. The stairwell exploded with gunfire. Figures stormed upward, shouting in a language Alvarez didn't understand. She pressed him forward, firing down the steps. Two fell. The man beside her covered the other flank, his shots clean, efficient. Alvarez stumbled but kept moving, adrenaline forcing his legs. They burst into the second floor, sprinting through broken walls and scattered debris. Bullets chased them, biting into plaster, throwing dust into the air. "Faster," she barked. Alvarez pushed, lungs burning. The man stayed close, covering their retreat. They burst through a shattered window frame and onto a half-collapsed balcony. The alley stretched below, slick with rain, barely lit by the glow of a flickering streetlight. Somewhere in the distance, the rumble of an engine, the evac truck waiting. "Go," she ordered. Alvarez jumped first, dropping hard into the alley. He rolled, scrambled to his feet, and signaled. She was next, landing rough, knees jolting, rifle still tight in her grip. She spun, aiming up. The man dropped last, hitting the ground with the ease of someone who had lived too many nights like this. He landed beside her, eyes locking on hers again. For a heartbeat, the three of them stood in the rain, caught between survival and history. Then gunfire erupted at the alley's mouth. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Alvarez dove for cover behind a rusted dumpster, shouting in panic. She dragged herself against the wall, returning fire. The man crouched beside her, calm even in chaos. "This way," he shouted, pointing deeper into the alley's maze. "The evac's a trap." Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" "Because they said it the same way for us. The convoy, the ambush, your sister." Her chest clenched. The radio hissed again. "South Alley, 10 seconds. If you're not here, we're gone." She pressed her head against the wet brick, heart hammering. Trust the voice in her ear. Men who had ignored her, dismissed her, written her sister off as collateral. Or trust the ghost beside her, the man who had broken her trust once, but was now the only thread to the truth she had been denied. Alvarez shouted from cover, "Ma'am, truck's right there, we can make it." The man's voice cut hard. "If you run to that truck, you're dead before the doors close." Her hands trembled on the rifle. The storm roared. The truck's headlights pierced the alley. Soldiers waved frantically. "Move, move, move." Alvarez bolted toward them, legs pumping, eyes wide with desperate hope. She stood frozen, torn in two, watching him run. The man's hand gripped her arm. His eyes were fierce, urgent. "Decide right now, do you want safety or truth?" Her lungs burned. The rain felt like needles against her skin. Her sister's face flashed in her mind, laughing, alive, gone. And then, the truck exploded. A fireball ripped the night apart, heat slamming against her chest, debris raining down the alley. Alvarez was thrown back, crashing against the dumpster with a scream. The soldiers who had waved were gone in an instant, swallowed by fire and shrapnel. Her ears rang, smoke filled her lungs, the world tilted. The man's voice broke through the chaos. "I told you, it was a trap." Her chest heaved, rage and horror colliding. She stumbled toward Alvarez, dragging him behind cover, checking his pulse with frantic hands. He was alive, burned, shaken, but alive. Her eyes lifted to the man, fury burning hot. "If you're lying." He shook his head. "You already know I'm not." And in that moment, As the fire lit the alley and the smoke choked the stars, she understood one thing with brutal clarity. Her mission wasn't about protecting the squad anymore. It was about uncovering the betrayal that had killed her sister. And now there was no turning back. How much blood must be spilled before the truth is worth it? The smoke still curled upward from the wreckage, embers glowing in the rain. The heat pressed against her face, the stink of burning fuel cutting into her lungs. Alvarez groaned, his body trembling as he tried to lift himself from the ground. His arm was scorched, his uniform torn and blood pooled beneath his ribs. She dropped beside him, fingers digging into his vest, eyes scanning for wounds. "Stay with me. You hear me." His lips quivered, teeth red with blood. I thought we were saved." Her throat tightened. The image of the truck exploding replayed in her mind, the soldiers waving 1 second, gone the next. She swallowed it down. "Don't talk, just breathe." The man crouched close, scanning the alley's mouth. "We don't have long. The blast will draw them here." Her head snapped toward him, fury sharp. "You knew." "I suspected." His voice was calm but not cold. "It's the same trick they used before." "On her." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Alvarez clutched her wrist weakly. His eyes, wide and unfocused, searched hers. "Don't leave me." She pressed her forehead against his briefly, closing her eyes. "Never." The man's voice cut through the storm. "If he stays here, he dies. If we move, he might still die, but slower." Her pulse thundered. Choices again, always choices. She tore fabric from her sleeve, pressing it against Alvarez's wound. He screamed, body arching before collapsing into shallow breaths. She gritted her teeth. "He comes with us." The man studied her, silent. Then he nodded. "Fine, but you carry both of them now, the boy and the truth." They dragged Alvarez deeper into the alley maze, his weight heavy on her shoulder. Her boots splashed through puddles, breath ragged, every step echoing against the walls. The city was alive with searching voices now. Radios crackled in the distance. Orders barked. The enemy was tightening its net. Her mind raced. She wanted to radio command, to scream at them, demand answers. But her earpiece only hissed static. The blast must have jammed or fried the channel. The man led them through a half-collapsed archway, into a narrow courtyard swallowed by weeds and rusted cars. He knelt, scanning rooftops before motioning her down. Alvarez slumped against a wall, groaning, his skin pale. She checked his pulse again. It was there, faint, fighting. Her eyes lifted to the man. "Talk." He hesitated. Rain dripped from his jaw, shadows cutting his face into sharp lines. "Your sister's mission. The official report said it was a supply raid gone bad. Wrong intel, wrong place, wrong time." Her throat burned. "I memorized that report." "So did I, because I helped write it." The words hit her like a round to the chest. She froze, hand tightening on her rifle. "What are you saying?" "I was part of her unit." His eyes flicked briefly to Alvarez, then back to her. "She didn't die in crossfire. She was left behind, on purpose." Her stomach turned. The courtyard seemed to tilt beneath her. "You're lying." "Am I?" His voice softened. "Why do you think the colonel avoids your eyes when her name comes up? Why do you think no one speaks of that night?" Her memories clawed up. Briefings, whispers that stopped when she entered, the way her requests for details had been drowned in silence. She wanted to scream, wanted to shoot him where he stood, but deep down the cracks had already been there. He was just tearing them open. Alvarez stirred weakly. What is he saying?" She brushed his hair back, forcing her voice steady. "Nothing you need to hear. Save your strength." The man crouched closer, voice low, urgent. "She trusted me. I failed her. And if you don't let me finish what she started, you'll never forgive me or yourself." Her jaw clenched. She hated him. She needed him. A crack split the air. A sniper round punched into the car beside them, showering sparks. She threw herself over Alvarez, heart hammering. The man ducked low, pistol raised, scanning rooftops. "They've got the angles, we need to move, now." Her rifle swung up, eyes darting across the rain-slick skyline. Nothing but shadows and antennae. The next shot might already be lined up. "Where?" she snapped. "There's an underground passage 2 blocks east. Old sewer lines. It's how I survived when they left us." Her eyes burned into him. "How do I know you're not leading us into another trap?" His answer was quiet, raw. "Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be lying with them in that truck." Another round cracked, closer this time. Alvarez whimpered, pressing into her. Her hands shook on the rifle, torn between disbelief and the pull of something deeper. The need for answers. The need for her sister's memory to mean more than a line in a report. Finally, she hissed through her teeth, "Fine, show the way." They moved again, weaving through back streets, dragging Alvarez, ducking low whenever searchlights swept the rain. Her body ached, her arms burned, but her grip never loosened on him. She would not leave him, not like her sister, not ever. At last the man pried open a rusted grate, revealing a black maw in the ground. The stench of sewage wafted upward. He dropped in first, landing silent. She lowered Alvarez next, grunting as his body slumped against her arms. Then she slid down after, the grate closing above. The darkness swallowed them. Only the drip of water echoed. Her breathing was ragged, her nerves stretched to breaking. She lit a small red glowstick, bathing the tunnel in ghostly light. The walls glistened, slick with decades of damp. The air was thick, metallic. Alvarez leaned against her, whispering through pain, why are we following him?" Her throat tightened, "Because he knows something about her." Alvarez's eyes closed, tears mixing with rain and blood. "Your sister." She nodded faintly, "Yeah, my sister." The man's voice echoed softly in the tunnel. "She wasn't supposed to die. None of us were. We were just pieces on their board, expendable." She gripped Alvarez tighter, fury burning behind her ribs. "Who?" He glanced back at her, eyes hollow in the red glow. "The ones who sent us here, the ones giving you orders right now." Her pulse hammered, the colonel's voice in her earpiece, the promises, the silence. It was all unraveling. Somewhere in the distance, the tunnel shook with the rumble of boots. The enemy was coming even here. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't running toward survival anymore. She was running straight into the heart of a lie. How much truth can a heart endure before it breaks? The tunnel walls pressed close around them, dripping with condensation, the smell of rust and rot heavy in the air. Every drip of water echoed like a clock ticking down. Alvarez leaned heavily against her, his breathing shallow, his uniform dark with blood. His eyes fluttered open now and then, only to slip shut again. She could feel the life leaking out of him, drop by drop. Her jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. She wasn't going to lose him, not here, not like this. The man walked a few paces ahead, his steps measured, his pistol steady in his hand. He seemed to know every twist of the tunnels, every ladder, every turn. He had walked this darkness before, survived it. Her voice cracked against the walls. "Why should I trust you?" He didn't stop. "Because the only thing worse than following me is staying loyal to them." His words lingered in the damp air. She hated them, hated how they rang true. Alvarez coughed weakly, blood flecking his lips. She pressed him tighter against her side, whispering, "Hold on, just hold on." The man finally halted at a rusted maintenance door. He pressed his ear against it, listening. Then he pushed it open slowly, revealing a small chamber, abandoned, lined with broken pipes and an old generator. "Here," he said, "we can stop for a moment." She guided Alvarez inside, lowering him gently to the floor. His face was pale, sweat gleaming on his forehead. She tore another strip of fabric, pressing hard against his wound. His scream rattled the walls. Her hands trembled. She was trained to shoot, to kill, to survive. but not to save a boy bleeding out in the dark. The man knelt across from her, watching in silence. Her eyes burned as she snapped, "Say what you came to say. Stop circling it, stop hiding." He studied her for a long moment, then reached into his jacket. From inside, he pulled a small, battered notebook. Its cover was torn, edges blackened by fire. Her breath caught. He held it out to her. It was hers. Her fingers shook as she took it. The leather was cold, damp from the tunnel air. She opened the first page, and there it was, her sister's handwriting, slanted, hurried, unmistakable. Her vision blurred instantly. The ink was smudged in places, but the words cut through, coordinates, names, fragments of thoughts. And in the corner of one page, a sentence that hollowed her chest. "If I don't make it, tell her it wasn't an accident." Her hand covered her mouth. The weight of it crushed her lungs. She closed her eyes, clutching the notebook to her chest. Memories surged, the last hug, the promise to write, the silence that followed. The man's voice broke through softly. She knew we were being fed false intel. She tried to warn us. That's why they left her. Her eyes snapped open, fury lighting her veins. Left her. His jaw tightened. She refused to follow an order she knew would kill civilians. They called it insubordination. When the ambush came, command didn't send backup. They let her fight alone. Her body trembled with rage. Every briefing, every salute, every word of loyalty she had given, it all cracked under the weight of betrayal. She wanted to scream, wanted to tear the walls down with her bare hands. But Alvarez groaned, weak, pulling her back to the moment. His life mattered, now. She looked at the man, tears streaking her face. "Why me? Why now?" "Because they'll do it again. To you, to him, to anyone who doesn't play their game." His eyes burned into hers. She believed the truth was worth dying for. "Do you?" The chamber fell silent, except for Alvarez's ragged breaths and the distant drip of water. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The notebook felt like fire in her hands. Then a metallic clang echoed through the tunnels. Voices, enemy patrols moving closer. The man snapped into action, dousing their glow stick with a twist. The chamber plunged into darkness. Her pulse roared in her ears. Alvarez whimpered softly, pressing against her side. She tightened her grip on him. The man's whisper brushed the dark. "We move now." She stuffed the notebook into her vest, lifted Alvarez again, and followed. The tunnels stretched deeper, winding like veins through the earth. The enemy's flashlights flickered behind them, shadows dancing on the walls. Every step was a battle. Her legs shook from Alvarez's weight, her lungs burned with the stench, but she pushed forward. Finally, the man halted at a ladder. He pointed upward. "Exit leads to the outskirts." She frowned. "What's waiting for us?" He looked at her, voice low. "Not safety, but someone who can prove everything." Her stomach tightened. The thought of more truth both terrified and fueled her. She adjusted Alvarez on her shoulder, then began climbing, rung by rusted rung, the notebook pressed tight against her chest. At the top, she pushed the grate open. Cold night air rushed in, sharp and wet with rain. The city stretched beyond, dark rooftops, the glow of fires still burning from the blast, searchlights cutting across the clouds. She hauled herself out, then Alvarez, then the man. For a moment she stood there, chest heaving, staring at the broken skyline. The war outside seemed smaller compared to the war now raging inside her. Her sister's voice echoed faintly in her mind. "Don't let them silence you." She looked at the man, her voice hard. "Show me all of it." He nodded once. "Then be ready, because once you see, there's no going back." And in that night, on the rooftop dripping with rain, with Alvarez bleeding at her side and her sister's notebook burning against her heart, she understood. The mission wasn't survival anymore. It was justice. What does justice cost when silence has already killed so much? The rooftop shivered under the rain, rivulets running across broken tiles, the city's glow flickering far below. She held Alvarez close, his breath shallow, his skin cold as stone. The notebook pressed against her chest like a second heartbeat. The man, her sister's ghost, her reluctant guide, stood at the edge of the rooftop, scanning the horizon. Searchlights cut across the sky, sweeping closer. Distant engines roared. "They know," he said softly, "that you're alive, that you've seen too much." Her jaw clenched. "Then they'll come." He turned, his face pale in the moonlight. "Not just them. Command won't save you. They'll want this buried. You, me, her, all of it." The words sank like stones in her chest. She had known, deep down, the way the radio had gone silent, the way orders had shifted, sharp and vague. She wasn't just a soldier anymore. She was a liability. Alvarez groaned, his hand weakly clutching her arm. His lips moved, cracked and broken. "Go home." Her eyes burned. "You'll get home, I promise." The man crouched beside them, setting down his pack. From inside he pulled a small transmitter, scuffed, dented, barely alive. "There's still a way. We send this out. Her notes. Names, places, everything. If we can push it to the right frequency, the world hears it." Her pulse quickened. Proof, not whispers, not rumors, proof. But her stomach nodded. "And then what? We're ghosts. No extraction, no command, just targets until they finish the job." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Lightning split the sky. For an instant she saw it all lit up. The ruins below, the fire-blackened streets, Alvarez's pale face, her own trembling hands. Her sister's words echoed again. "If I don't make it, tell her it wasn't an accident." She looked at the notebook, at the weight of every word written in her sister's hand, and she knew. The man pressed the transmitter into her palm. "Choice is yours." Her throat ached. "Why me?" "Because you're the last one who will still fight for her name." His eyes softened, voice breaking. "And because I can't carry this anymore." The hum of engines grew louder. Helicopters, drones. The city trembled under the hunt. Alvarez coughed blood, whispering something she almost didn't catch. "Worth it." Her vision blurred. She tightened her grip on him, on the notebook, on the transmitter. Her answer was a whisper carried away by the rain. "It has to be." The man adjusted the transmitter, static filling the air. "Once this goes live, there's no undoing it. They'll hear. Everyone will." She pressed the button. The signal whined, cracked, then steadied. Her sister's coordinates, reports, warnings, all encoded, spilling into the night sky. A flare of truth in the darkness. Somewhere far above, the searchlights turned. Engines roared closer. They were coming. The man met her eyes. For the first time, there was something almost peaceful in his face. "Then we hold until they can't silence it." She raised her rifle, settling Alvarez behind cover, her finger steady on the trigger. Rain dripped down her cheek, mixing with tears she no longer tried to hide. The first shots cracked across the rooftop. Muzzle flashes split the night. She returned fire, every squeeze of the trigger fueled by rage, by love, by memory. The man fought beside her, his pistol barking sharp in the storm. Each second the transmitter hummed was another victory, another nail in the coffin of their silence. But they were outnumbered. Shadows swarmed the rooftops, boots pounding, rifles blazing. Alvarez cried out, curling tighter behind cover. She pressed on. She had nothing left to lose but her sister's name. Her body ached, blood streaming from a cut across her arm, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Minutes stretched into forever. Each round fired was a promise kept. Each breath was defiance. Then silence. Not from her rifle, from the transmitter. Its light blinked out, battery dead. She froze, heart stopping. Had it been enough? Had the signal carried far enough, long enough? Or had it died in the dark with them? The man met her gaze, his chest heaving, his face smeared with rain and soot. He gave a faint nod as if to say, "It's done." Alvarez whimpered, reaching for her hand. She clasped it tight, squeezing with everything she had left. The searchlights swept over them, blinding, merciless. Orders barked in the distance, footsteps closing. She lowered her rifle slowly, the weight of the night pressing on her shoulders. She thought of her sister, not in the hospital bed, not in the silence that followed, but laughing, alive, fierce. Her voice was a whisper lost in the rain. "They can't bury you anymore." The man stood beside her, shoulders squared, unflinching as the storm closed in. And in that final moment, before the floodlights, before the boots, before the silence returned, she understood the truth her sister had carried all along. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The screen of her mind froze on that image. A rooftop under rain, a soldier clutching her sister's notebook, a boy barely breathing, a man who had already died once standing tall. And then darkness,